All right, everyone. Good afternoon. Happy New Year. Hope everyone is doing well. Despite all the craziness going on, man, everybody's being safe and sound. If you haven't noticed, I actually have a different background. It's because I'm back home in New York City visiting family, and I'm at WeWork, which is a nice, cozy workspace, and give you guys a break from the white wall behind me in previous videos. Oh, so again, I am Daryl Lawson. I am the co-founder and CEO of Blurp, which is a social networking app that's going to be geared towards businesses to share out and push their monetizing content to get more business. And today I have the pleasure to interview the co-founder of Story2Brand and one of my great friends, Shantelle Brumfield. Welcome, Shantelle.
Hey, Daryl.
Hey, hey,
Happy
how's it
New
going?
Year.
Likewise, Happy New Year to you as well.
I must admit, I'm kind of jealous because, I've been in a house.
Right,
So
right,
the fact
right.
that you have moved from California, even just to be in New York for a short spell, is like jealousy on top of jealousy.
Yeah, you won't be jealous of the cold weather. I mean, it's a little warm now in the mid 40s, but when I first got here, we had a snowstorm and it was like in the 20s and stuff. But it's a little bit better now. You
you
know, it's good to be
know,
back home.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I may have because, it's much nicer than probably looking at, white walls. Well, that's the reason why I created the backdrop so I could have something else to look at.
Tell me about it. Yeah, no, absolutely. So, all right, we're going to get started with our interview. And the first hot seat question I have for you is it's not even a hot seat. Just tell us a little bit about who you are, for those out there that may not know what Chantel Brunfield does, where she came from, what she stands for. So, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Okay, so as mentioned, I'm here in California. I'm actually a California native. I was born and raised in a very small city called Vallejo, California, that a lot of people around the world are really getting an opportunity to hear more often because of E40 and the artist
Yep.
Her. So they have definitely put us on the map.
Yep.
I am a graduate of Howard University and Stanford University.
Nice.
My professional background started off in science and, really in the medical space.
Mm.
And during the time as a scientist, I was kind of like in this space of battling, being creative, being smart, and wanting to make money. And I decided to jump into my own pilot seat when I discovered a way for me to utilize my love for science and connect it to my passion for being creative. And that's just a little bit about myself.
Yeah, we don't really see too many people that are into science, into creativity. That's kind of like a fox pause sometimes. So we're gonna dive into a little bit of that. So
Okay.
you were headed down a path of going to medical school, and then you
Hmm.
decided to pivot into the business world, and like you mentioned, more specifically into the creative space, such as brand development, coaching, and strategy. Why don't you tell us a little bit about why did you make that pivot and how did you do it? Because that seems like a very hard transformation to do.
Yeah, and most people tell you you pick something, stick to it.
Right.
So I guess my journey really started, this is an important year for me in 2021
Mhm.
because this represents 20 years ago of me making this decision to really make the decision not to be a broke college student.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
here I was moving from California. I learned to crochet when I was around 9 years old. And, during the time, I decided it was kind of cool to utilize my skill set to make hats and scarves for people. Originally, it started off that, like during that time, everyone around here, at least in the Bay Area, was really
Right.
into Gap and Eddie Bauer and wearing like, winter clothing. Although a lot of people think it doesn't get cold here in the Bay Area, it's nothing in comparison to actually living in the snow. And
Right.
so I spent a lot of time just creating hats and scarves, and I really began to get this buzz. Meanwhile, I was a pre med major, ended up again starting my career as a scientist. I took kind of a deferred year because I wasn't quite sure if I really wanted to go to medical school then. And but what it did for me with the science base is my focus is behavioral studies.
Mm.
I spent a lot of time pilot testing big pharmaceutical drugs and kind of doing case studies where we were working directly with soldiers. And
Right.
you know what kind of came out of that was there was a pattern of behavior.
Mm.
And when we talk about branding, your brand is your ability to really infuse yourself, or therefore, in my case, my passion, for being creative into what's being created at the end as an end product, whether it be a product or a service. And during the time, I discovered this meaningfulness and making sure I find a purpose for that passion. And during that time in particular on campus, it was just like, okay, I'm gonna help people look fly. That's what I was helping people solve. There are other crocheters on campus, but it got into a point where people knew me. And I think that one of the biggest parts that really just solidified my decision into, being creative and being okay with that was Howard Homecoming. So everyone knows, and especially you're going to know really soon, right, Daryl,
Yeah.
about Howard Homecoming being the biggest thing that happens as far as culture goes, right? And so
Yep.
here I had this budding brand, during the time, brand was not necessarily the term that was connected to it. It was just like, this is my side hustle business.
Right.
And I was looking for a way to really extend it beyond just like my classmates and maybe people on campus who may or may have not known. It was like, these were made by my hands.
Right.
And so I forged my way into getting into the Howard Homecoming fashion show. And that really changed, really this view. I would say this is the second time that, number one was identifying this passion I have, and now moving into this space, it was an eye-opening experience in a way that how strategy and how brand strategy kind of connects in a way that integrates itself into culture. And once I did that fashion show, I ended up landing doing bikinis for like the Sean Paul video. I ended up doing a bunch of magazine work. I connected with a bunch of celebrities, and I ended up getting the cover of Double XL magazine with Remy Ma. And she wore like just some crochet door knockers. But what that did for me is that no matter what, even to this day, when people hear, Shantelle as that LadyBug, that in their minds they naturally connect it to yarn. Because most people don't know the difference between crocheting and knitting. It's just like it's all yarn to them. So sometimes it may be, are you still crocheting? You knitting? You still doing your yarning thing? But the point of the story was that looking at how you integrate your passion, which is yourself, into a purpose that's going to help people, that ultimately leads to a profit. And that's really the it of it. And that kind of led me into a space. I'm going to probably just take it out in a minute, but led me to a space where I opened up a co-op in DC. It was the first designer co-op. And again, this is like, again, the celebration of a lot of things for me. I just recently posted on my social this photo of me being in DC Fashion Week in 2006. And that was just, maybe again, just the thought process of understanding how far the thought process can go for a brand and what you're establishing.
This is like the ultimate rebellious path. You're in this, pretty much foolproof career strategy of going to medical school and becoming a doctor. And you just like, F that, I'm going to be a creative. Like most people would never do that. And somehow you walked into this by accident and you started building a brand for yourself, got into the HU fashion show, doing stuff for Remy Ma. This sounds like a Hollywood story, you know what I mean? And like somehow you was able to pull it off, man. And that sounds like you could write a book in itself on how did you do that.
You may have an idea, Daryl.
Yeah, because most people ain't passing up an opportunity where they have an entry, a clear path to go to medical school, and you did it. And somehow you were securing your decision, and that took a lot of risk. And I'm glad you were able to share that with us.
Yeah, because I mean, when you look at it, if you have the right foundation, if things were to go entirely left and I didn't get the outcomes that I wanted, and even still to this day, I can still go back because again, I still finished out my degrees. I did the work. I have a foundation. My knowledge base hasn't really changed. So it just leaves it open, non-traditionally.
No, absolutely, man. You are definitely, one of the few who ventured a different path, against the risk averse opportunity of going to medical school. So you mentioned something about the yarn movement. So tell us a little bit more about the yarn movement and what was your purpose behind doing the yarn movement for, so that way those out there can know about what it is.
Okay. So Yarn Movement is a global fashion and lifestyle brand that was really inspired to really help consumers value craftsmanship within their consumption, and it's based really on three pillars, one being biology, second being chemistry, and the other one being psychology.
Mm,
Biology, because when you think of the name biology, it's the life of, and it's really the life of me as a designer, how I've gone from this space where I learned to crochet at a young age into starting this business freshman year of college until where I am now. And then when you think of chemistry, it's really those built-in collaborations that happen along the way. Because
mhm.
as much as people like to say self-made mobile and mogul and
Yeah.
self-made millionaire, like that's not honestly true because someone opened a door, someone probably gave you a hand, you
Yeah.
know, and at some point it was a collaboration that moved you into another process, whether it be a value that you picked up by something that they did for you, some
Mhm.
knowledge like experienced from a learning process of something that went left, because we could talk all day about things that go left, right? uh,
Mhm. Yeah.
and then that last part is the psychology. It's the real true meaning of why. And for me, it really directly puts me in a space that over the course of all of this time, not only can I help consumers understand how to value craftsmanship, and that's an important conversation too, because we're living in a time where everything is kind of like, click of a button, nuke
Mhm.
it. Anyone can go online, pick a t-shirt, pick a design that you want, and
Mhm.
have it delivered. And depending on what service you're going through, it could be delivered that day.
Yeah.
So the challenge with that is that for myself and other designers who are in the handcrafting community, or just designers who are all about that, couture, or even just cut and sew, whatever it may be,
Mm.
that we put our heart and soul into the things that we create. And so when I'm showing people, like the value of, okay, why should you buy a beanie from me versus buying one from the store? Well, that was done by
Mhm.
machine. I go out and I personally hand select yarn that's being used. You know, I'm making something that's geared towards you,
Yeah.
that is going to make you look fly,
Mhm. Yeah.
and it's done in a way where it's a trickle down effect. It's just you purchase from me, you're helping something else happen, you know? And so for that, I even also began to start showing other artisans how they can come in and do the same thing, not necessarily follow my footsteps if it's, doesn't really fit into where they plan on going, but
Yep.
just showing that there's other things. There's something I can bring up that I just kind of mentioned before about DC Fashion Week.
Yeah.
Another eye opener. Here we are with this co-op, and we are kind of battling everyone going to Fashion Week in New York, going to trade shows in New York, and buyers purchasing that way. And then
Mhm.
everything was being brought back down to department stores and boutiques in DC. And here we are, like 12 local designers, all in this co op together, and we're getting ready to do this show and invite buyers. So
Mhm.
here I am. During that time, I was doing, mostly one offs, couture pieces, and there were a lot of buyers who were interested in my pieces, whether it be in the swimwear
Yep.
or, some of like just the outerwear pieces from jackets and coats, whatever was put in the show. Like I was doing
Right.
jumpers and all kind of stuff.
Right.
And a buyer, they're like, oh, so our deliverable is 200 pieces,
Mm.
right? And it immediately opened my eyes to let me know that I was treating my business as a hobby during that time, even though it was a business.
Right.
And it made me open up to understand the different diversified ways to really open up business. So I started
Mhm.
pattern making, I started teaching. I was licensing off my patterns to larger luxury brands
Mm.
because they were dealing with manufacturers. So I can give them the design, they can get them made, but they have to license it from me.
Mm.
And so being in a space for yarn movement for me, that's why I started this budded part of it to help artisans on not the retail side, but on the side of developing your brand. And it's called Addiction by Yarn Movement. Because if you're a handcrafter or if you're creating something, you almost have an addiction for what you're doing,
Mm.
and your clients become your addicts.
Mhm. Wow, this story is unbelievable, man. From med school to DC Fashion Week to to craftsmanships with creating clothes and fantastic fashion by hand. Like this is crazy, man. Like I haven't met a person like this. This sounds like something out of a book that I can't relate to, but I'm glad I know somebody such as yourself who was able to do all these fantastic things. And I'm just really grateful, that you shared, about your journey pivoting from medical school to fashion to the yarn movement and all the different passions you have. That's awesome, Shantelle. So now we're going to get into, Howard University, the profile is about to explode right now. It's always been the HU. It's always been the mecca, of HBCUs. I know
Mhm.
arguably other folks may say otherwise, but for this conversation, because you're an alum, we're going to stick with that. So, I see that you're an alum from there, and which is the
Mhm.
same as VP Kamala Harris. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience attending HU, and how has that experience helped you throughout your career up to this point in your life?
So I will say this. Going and attending Howard University was one of the best decisions I ever made, um, for several reasons, but I'll boil it down to two for the sake of this conversation. Howard University is where I learned the meaning of lift as you climb.
Mm.
Going into the school, people always ask, where was it a culture shock going to all Black college? And for me, I would say that the most shocking experience probably for me was the fact that, here I come from this small city. I went to mostly a predominantly white high school. I
Mhm.
graduated in a top percentile. And as I continue to go through the higher level of education within high school, the less of us that you'll see present. So I'm one of one in most classes, one of two. And here I am, I land myself in this university where everyone around me, it seemed like that I spoke to, had that same journey that all landed us all in the same place.
Mm.
That in itself immediately convicted my spirit,
Mm.
because I felt comfortable. I didn't feel a need to code switch, that I can speak exactly how I wanted to. Um, when you walk on the campus, there's just a feeling that you get that you're amongst your ancestors.
Mm.
It's the richest soil you can pretty much be on. When you walk into the middle of the yard, you're standing right in front of Founders Library. That's a location where they were doing the research and deliberations for Brown Board versus Board of Education. You have the Elaine Locke building, where we all know him to be a pivotal part of culture,
Mm.
and holding to the reporting in the narrative.
Mhm.
Then we have Douglas Hall. Then it's just this commemoration, and it's all centered around a flagpole. And then you have pretty much everyone who kind of comes there, although the different colleges are kind of like all centered around, for the entire university. That is kind of like the location where you come and you're welcome home. You feel it.
Yeah.
And so that's what it has meant for me. And career wise, when you have the ability of saying HU, it's always a that is that process of letting you got people backing you no matter what. That is
Mhm.
your forever, you know, joker wild card that you can carry around with you.
Right. Right.
Given the fact that already, although you showed up for the first time probably in most of our lives, and I could just talk for myself, that I showed
Mhm.
up 100% alive in the moment. And being on campus and going through the 4 years and going through the programming and going through the adversity, because there are adversity you deal with. You
Mhm.
pretty much are growing up
Yeah.
at college,
Mhm.
and for me, here I am on the other side of the world. I felt like, and you just build bonds that last forever. And you can always call folks. You can always know that you're not alone, and that's meaningful.
Mm. Oh, that's terrific. See, when you was talking about the founders library and all of that, I actually felt like I was there walking the campus, even though I have no idea what it actually feels like being there. But when you was talking about the energy and all of that, Nah, that's interesting that you still can go back to that, after all these years of your experience there. And that's awesome, man. And Howard University is second rate to no one. It's a first rate institution. It can compete with the best of them, with the Harvards and the Stanfords of the world. So with that being said, I have to ask this question. So you also graduated from Stanford. So that's and it's right. It's one of the top three institutions in the world, and everything. So tell us about a compare and contrast between Stanford and Howard.
Because I attended Howard first, and just let's just break down even just how it all happened. So
Mhm.
I walked in Howard with enough credits to be a sophomore. So I actually finished my program at Howard in 2 years.
Mhm.
And I just decided to pick up additional. So I was a biology, chemistry major, minor in math, pre-med, of course. And so I just finished out the full chemistry degree at Stanford.
Hmm.
But I would say that because I was already energized and I discovered my confidence in who I am to show up in every space that I go to alive,
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
it made my experience at Stanford different, I think,
Sure.
from probably most people who didn't go through that path. And so here I am. I was very focused and understood why.
Mhm.
And I think that in both sides of it, it was a well-rounded experience just to have on both sides, having, both sides of the education piece and having the experience of being on a large campus that has a D1, you know,
Yeah.
D1 sports program. My older cousin actually was on the basketball team. So I also had that element of being able to go to Stanford basketball games and football
Mhm.
games
Yeah.
and just being present in what most people only can experience from either the outside
Right.
or, on something you see on TV.
Mhm.
And that's actually, I don't want to get too far off course, but that's actually where I was able to really bud my interest around audio and TV film projects because I was working for Sony Sound and Forge as an intern while I was there. Well, interns don't normally get paid, but I was getting paid really
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Nah, that's great, man. And I like you talked about the confidence factor that Howard gave you and prepared you to go into Stanford. I definitely felt the
Hmm.
same thing going to my HBCU from undergrad, and it prepared me for my first master's degree at NYU, dealing with a larger campus, dealing with, folks that got unlimited resources, and it
Hmm.
prepared me to deal with all those different walks of life. So I definitely can relate to you dealing with the family atmosphere to a larger than life real world atmosphere. So no, totally get it.
And it was
So
still a family atmosphere at Stanford, but it was more like isolated. So, there was different programming. So now I'm back to a space where it was a need for BSU,
yep,
um, where I stayed in, UJ, which was UJMA is like the Black dorm on campus,
sure.
you
Mm-hmm.
know. It was also like a great experience because all of my contacts and, connections that I made school within school and within that experience still
Mm-hmm.
play out today. You know, I could say, who can really say that they had classes with Issa? Me,
Right.
you know, Jadena was on campus too. We were all
Mm-hmm.
cool. Like, my business partner now, we have a full out business from a connection that we made then.
Mm.
So it's just, it's different in a way, but it still all plays out the same for me because, again, in my mindset, it's connect, lift as you climb, and figure out what you can do for each other to help each other get to the next step.
No, absolutely. And I love that lift as you climb. And that's going to help us pivot now into Story to Brand. So you're the
Hmm.
co-founder of Story to Brand.
Yeah.
Just tell us a little bit more how Story to Brand helps small business owners and entrepreneurs, make a dent in the world and play big in the game. I'm very familiar with Story to Brand, but I want you to tell those out there who may not be familiar with Story to Brand.
Okay. So Story2Brand helps businesses, entrepreneurs, and nonprofits craft the best story in to tell in person, online, and on paper. That's going to best connect them to their audience. For
Hmm.
me, where I come in is that, my background is in behavioral studies and research. So I use the science of behavioral studies to help train the mindset of these business owners, founders, and nonprofits to
Yep.
understand how they're going to position themselves to not only connect with their ideal audience, but
Mhm.
also how they're going to engage, educate,
Yep.
enrich the experience of their brand, to for business owners connect with more clients to patronize their business,
Yep.
for entrepreneurs to be in a space where they're utilizing their story a lot more to really connect to the culture,
Mhm.
and nonprofits to be in a space of conveying the right message that's going to lead them to what they care about most, which is really generally around donations and donors and
Yep.
cultivating those kind of relationships so they can really, really get to a place where their mission is driving home for them.
Now that's awesome. So all you small businesses out there and entrepreneurs that are black and brown, and you're kind of lost in your direction as far as what niche you should go into, how to target your customer base, please check out Shantelle Brumfield, Story2Brand. You can Google it. She'll
Hmm.
get you right. I can definitely co-sign that. She's definitely helped me found direction with my business endeavors and with Blurp and helping us get to the next step. You can't do this alone. You need help. So her and her business partner would definitely get you guys going in the right direction. And you can thank me later. Cool.
Thanks, Daryl.
So although, yeah, no, absolutely. Gotta definitely shout you out. So with all the work and the hustling and the projects that you have going on, how do you manage your work-life balance with your family, as well as your business? And any helpful tips that you can provide will be greatly helpful, will be very helpful to the community out there and for other folks out there, because that's the one constant that's been a struggle with work-life balance. So just, if you have some tips, that'd be great if you could share that with us.
Okay, so number one thing I would say about balance and just the term that we define as balance is ever changing, right? Because the world is changing, the world is turning. So, there are things that have to change. For me, my number one thing that I always recommend is creating a plan.
Mm.
Not only just one plan, because I think that sometimes when you hear have a plan, that it's like there's supposed to be this one size fit all plan that's going to help you
Mhm.
throughout life.
Yeah.
And I just don't find that to be the case for myself, and most likely for other people, if we were to
Right.
really be honest. So,
Mm.
literally having a plan for your health, having a plan for how you're going to promote self care for yourself. You know, how are you going to be, show up for your family and be there, be support that you need to be. Um, and then ultimately, I always like to keep business last, because for me, business is, a gift.
Yep.
It's something that we're able to do if we're doing it properly. We're
Mhm.
helping people. And, in order to get to a place where you can help people, you have to be in position where you can. So if you need help, and not necessarily in the business that you're offering, but if you just need help in your own personal life, you should get right before you begin to bring that energy into what you're working on. So ultimately, I would say plan. And, even if you go check me out on my LinkedIn or even
Yep.
on any of my social, you always see me say PPP. And this is before Paycheck Protection Program even came around. But the
Yeah.
PPP for me stands for passion, purpose, and plan, because the
Awesome.
planning part of it just is the planning part of it is key, because if you have a plan, then you'll know how to strategically move forward on things, where you're planning on heading, and again, that plan is going to change, because how often do we have a plan, even for our day? And
Yep.
then we get caught up on the phone,
Mhm.
technology isn't working really great for
Yeah.
us
Right.
and it
Right.
just
Right.
throws
Right.
everything off. But, if you're keeping to that plan, you know, you'll hit it, right? Especially if you're
Mhm.
not trying to
Yep.
be outrageous. Like, hey, the plan for today is to do this
Yep.
one thing. So
I think that's very,
plan.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think that's very important that you mentioned plan for your health. I think as social media and the internet evolved, I think a lot of us started to realize as we got into the lives of our favorite celebrities and people we look up to and business people,
Hmm.
I think us understanding that you got to plan for your health, I think that's very paramount now. You just can't get up, be a genius, make everything work without taking care of yourself. And even for me, for my first few years out here, out in Silicon Valley, I didn't have any reference to folks on how they managed their day. I just thought they were brilliant and they just came up with these great ideas and they worked tirelessly to bring
Hmm.
it out into the world. But that's so not true. And you definitely have to take, stock of your physical health as well as your emotional health and your mental health. So I'm really glad you say you have to plan for your health. And that's something I've been cognizant of doing, the last few years. And I'm just really
Right.
glad share that because that's going to make a difference in other people's lives as far as this is not a race, it's a marathon. So thank you.
Exactly. And I think that if people didn't know that already, they definitely know after experiencing this pandemic, because you could have been on this job and you're on this track
Yeah.
of success, and pandemic hit and the company that you were working for had to shut down.
Mm, yes.
Many people, I think that especially for Story2Brand, we were able to really flip mindset, because entrepreneurship is really about mindset,
Yeah.
of just telling people, hey, this is maybe your opportunity to go after what you're really passionate about.
No, absolutely. And I'm glad you touched on a COVID point. So I know you got to run soon, so we just got a few questions left.
Okay.
Um, so now, in addition to the well-being, I want you to talk about what are some tips and strategies that you can share to help others to maintain stability and peace within themselves during these challenging times. So you touched on planning your health. Are there any other things you do, such as meditating, you know, affirmations, whatever? Just share a couple if you don't mind.
So the number one thing I do is I roll yarn balls, which sounds so simple. However, um, because I am a creative mind, because I'm thought process, I have a big idea, like I feel like every 2 seconds, that just rolling yarn and a repetition allows my brain to settle up
Mm,
and refocus, recalibrate, to a point that, one of the things about creating plans is that at some point you're going to need to hire someone to help
yep.
you,
Hmm.
or be able to have interviews like this where you can explain exactly what you're doing. And
Yep.
really, nobody really wants to talk to a scatterbrain, because, if you haven't found a focus of how you're going to address the things that you want to address, how are you going to put that energy on someone else? And
True.
so, again, just the mechanism of just the repetitiveness of rolling yarn really does this, is that it takes the thoughts and connects it with an action that
Yes.
allows you to focus. And that's what I do. And it keeps me very focused, even when I'm like having like some of my board meetings, or just being around different energies,
Yep.
which, we all get an opportunity to experience because so much is on digital platforms now,
Yep.
that I literally have yarn all over the place, like next to me, and I just
Right.
roll yarn. And sometimes I end up doing it there because I just feel myself, and I need to calm it down as far as thoughts, because I don't want to take over people's meetings. I don't want
Right.
to, be in excess energy. And so I calm it down first before I respond.
Not awesome, man. It's definitely very zen-like, a lot, very, mindfulness and being
Hmm.
present in what you're doing. And kind of my thing is I play chess, to
Uh-huh.
keep me in the moment with strategy.
Yeah.
I stay losing to the computer on level 5 on my chess app, but you know what? It keeps me engaged. It keeps me, sharp and declutters myself. So I definitely appreciate you sharing that process with the yarn balls.
Yeah, and one other part of it is that to do it solo is cool, but it's also very fun and engaging to do what I call healing circles,
Mm,
where everyone in the circle is kind of rolling balls together. Because honestly, you never know what people are actually putting off, as far as what they're actually going through internally.
mm-hmm.
And again, the same thing that it does with the mind allows it to do with your body, and you have an escape that you don't necessarily have to verbalize. You can just put it in a
Right.
yarn ball.
Awesome, man. No, I love that tip with getting others involved, especially during this time, because you can uncover things and figure out similarities with what other folks are going through. No, appreciate that.
Exactly.
So, with everything going on with COVID and those that have been impacted by job losses, as you mentioned, and is possibly exploring entrepreneurial options, what advice do
Mhm.
you have for those wanting to pursue that as an option at this moment in time today?
Number one thing I would say is identify your passion. If you can put yourself in a space where you can identify your passion, that is truthfully the reason why you do what you do so well. So this could show up in a space where people tell you you're a great cook.
Mhm.
You really create, cards or whatever the business may be, and
Yep.
you just do it as a hobby. You really enjoy it though, but you haven't quite figured out a way to connect it to a purpose. And that purpose can be utilized and it should be aligned with a way that you're going to help people. And when you connect your passion to a purpose that's going to help people, it'll lead to a profit. And then when you're
Mm.
in that space, that's how you'll know you have a great business idea. And you should probably call me instead of a 15-minute alignment call so I can help you walk through it to make sure that it really like makes sense for you.
Now, that's awesome. And I'm glad you walked us through how to find your passion and how to turn that into a profit. Because oftentimes, the folks that have already made it, the first thing they say is, hey, you want to get rich or have a life like no one has? Find your passion.
Hmm.
You never have to work a day in your life, but there's so many layers involved with that. And I'm glad you kind of gave us those, roadmaps real quickly on how to get there. But if you need help with that for those out there, check out Story2Brand with Shantelle and Brumfield. She'll get you right, going in the right direction. I promise you. All right. So, what other entrepreneurial projects that we should be on the lookout for, that you may have up your sleeve?
Okay, so yes, so at the top of our interview, I mentioned the three pillars of yarn movement, the last being psychology. That's really the reason why. And really my reason why is connected to a nonprofit. I have a nonprofit called Believe in What You Dream.
Mm,
Believe in What You Dream has a mission of helping young girls discover their superpowers.
mm.
Superpowers for me could be confidence, awareness,
Yep.
capability, whatever that adjective verb it is that's being used to describe the moment that a girl is in. I utilize three different aspects through a workshop to really get them to a place where they can make this discovery. I mean, because you can be in, space all day, every day where people say, oh, follow your dreams, because that's something that hits true for my journey, especially
Yep.
in the beginning. But I don't know about you, but last time I checked, even when people say that, it's not like you are given like this manuscript of what steps
No.
to follow.
Mm-mm.
It requires a process of you taking
Yes.
action, failing, having success, and putting yourself in position to have confidence to keep on moving forward. So with my workshops, there's three different aspects. The first being the dreams you create. And so the dream that you create, we're creating dream catchers. Dream catchers as a way to visualize this thing that you own, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not always do you have this space where you can articulate what your dreams are.
Mm-hmm.
And not that you want to sit back and tell everybody, but it should be something that you can hold on to. And
Right.
so having a dream catcher that you have up above your bed, that means that you go to sleep and wake up to it every day.
Mm-hmm.
And, no matter if you had a good or a bad day, you always have something to look forward to.
Right on.
Second is, journaling your journey. I don't necessarily think I have to explain the journaling portion of it, but the journey part of it is important because a lot of us, I know for me, I carry around a lot of different notebooks. I have notebooks
Yeah.
in every single bag, every room, every desk where I'm
Mm-hmm.
working because I do what I call brain dumps. So I'm literally dumping out my brain of my ideas and
Mm-hmm.
I'll go through and I'll circle out the things that kind of make sense for me in that moment. But what's important to the journaling process is making sure you go back and identify the things that worked, the things that
Mm-hmm.
didn't work,
Yep.
and the people who helped, where you could use help moving forward. And really doing that over a course of period of time, what it does for you is that it puts you directly in your pilot seat, as I like to call it, right? Where every online guru right now is telling you this is the antidote. This is the secret sauce to success.
Yep.
But if you go through and journal your own journey, that is your story. That is what's going to put you into success. And last is the power of the stitch. I personally teach crochet for two reasons. It's a theoretical empowerment, but also it's economic empowerment.
Mm-hmm.
And theoretically, again, what I just mentioned before, the brain is really wired to operate in codes and patterns. right? And so if you put yourself in a space where you're doing something that it's following a pattern by hand, those come into actions, and what they're doing is empowering you to keep on going.
Right.
Theoretically, if you fall in love with stitching, whether it be crochet or whatever it may be, you can put yourself in direct position to start a business.
Yeah.
Have your own version of yarn movement at some point,
Yeah.
right? And in communities that we're going into is very important, because sometimes these little girls are overlooked, they're ignored, and just coming in to just do these 3-part steps directly puts them in position to understand that I'm powerful. And it didn't require someone on the outside to help me discover it. Maybe it was a tool, but
Right.
it's like I'm kind of like leading people to the water, like you can shove their head in, but they have to ultimately make the decision to drink. And
Absolutely.
that is my passion project.
Man, Shantelle, you're just on it, man. But for those, not only does she can help you get you right with your business and your focus, but if you want to, learn to dream again or take your dream to the next level, contact her, man. And Story2Brand should get you
I'm
going.
here.
So you're officially off the hot seat. So now, just how can folks find you on the internet? On social media. Tell us your Instagram, your
Okay,
Facebook,
so
Twitter.
first, YouTube. So my YouTube channel is Yarn Movement. And I want to say that because a part of the story that I was just telling on believing in what you dream. Our last activation, we went into East Africa and I worked with 3,000 girls. And so there's a video there that kind of shows like our journey. We ended up installing we did solar. I worked with a solar energy company, but I was giving all the girls solar energy lamps, and it's a really cool video. And then also, it's a bunch of TikTok videos over there that are getting a bunch of love. Second, I would say Facebook. Yarn Movement there, and then Instagram. And if you're just interested in finding me on Instagram, on my personal stuff, it's s.ladybug official. Otherwise, Yarn Movement.
You forgot the most important plug, Shantelle, the Story2Brand website.
Well, no. Well, Story2Brand, it was going to be the part that I ended off with when you're like, do you have
Oh, okay.
anything else to say?
Okay, yeah.
But yes, I do have anything else to say. So everyone has a story. At Story2Brand, we help you make it a great one. And so please visit www.story2brand.com.
Awesome, Shantelle. No, thank you for your time today. This has been a great interview in the winter days of January in this new year of 2021. Hopefully better days are ahead. We can get back to some sense of normalcy. For those out there, thanks for rocking with me with the Bluurp Founder Stories hosted by myself, Darryl Austin. Until next time, peace out.
All right.
Take care.